Hello friends, today we are going to start our new chapter Living World and Classification of Microbes. In this chapter we have to observe different contents as biodiversity and need of classification, history of classification, criteria used for classification, five kingdom system of classification, kingdom Monera, kingdom Protista, kingdom Fungi and classification of microbes. Before starting the chapter, we have to know about the previous knowledge of the chapter. That is, some questions given in your textbook under the heading Can you recall? Let's start Can you recall? In that, first question, what is the hierarchy for classification of living organisms? The hierarchy for classification is kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus and species. You can observe in given picture also. Second question, who invented binomial system of nomenclature? Sir Carl Linnaeus invented binomial system to name different organisms present on the earth. Third question, which level of hierarchy are considered while writing the name in binomial nomenclature? Mainly two levels of hierarchy, that is genus and species, are considered to naming system. Now the next part of our chapter, that is biodiversity and need of classification. From biodiversity we start our chapter. In our previous classes we already completed different studies regarding to the biodiversity, in which definition or different rare species. Now we recall the definition of biodiversity, that is the existence of different kinds of plants and animals on earth is known as biodiversity. Now what is the need for classification of different organisms present on the earth? We all know that about 87 million species of living organisms are found on the earth, and to study their characteristics we have to classify them into different groups and subgroups. To study the living organisms, mostly they are classified into different groups. Now whenever we know about the classification and its need, the next part is history of classification. In previous period, different scientists tried to classify living organisms into different groups. For example, you can observe the given chart. Sir Carl Linnaeus in 1735 classified all living organisms into two groups, Vegetabilia and Animalia. After Linnaeus, Sir Haeckel in 1866 classified all organisms into three groups, that is Protista, Plantae and Animalia. After Haeckel, Sir Chatton classified again all the organisms into two kingdoms, Prokaryota and Eukaryota. After that, Sir Copeland classified all living organisms into four kingdoms, that is Monera, Protista, Plantae and Animalia. And after that, the last classification was given by Sir Whittaker, which is also known as five kingdom system of classification, in which all living organisms are classified into five kingdoms, Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae and Animalia. All these organisms are classified according to similarities and differences among themselves, and according to that this classification is in the form of groups and subgroups. Now when we think about the classification, each classification requires some criteria, because without criteria we cannot classify living organisms. As we know the similarities and differences, but in which content we have to observe these similarities and contents, that are known as criteria used for classification, in which our first criteria is complexity of cell structure. According to the cell structure, all living organisms are classified into prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. It means that cells which have nucleus without nuclear membrane are known as prokaryotes, while those organisms who have enclosed nucleus, that are known as eukaryotic organisms. The second criteria we observe complexity of organisms. All living organisms present in the earth are in the different form. For example, we can observe some organisms are unicellular while some are multicellular. According to the number of cells, organisms are classified into two different groups. Now, the next, that is mode of nutrition. According to the mode of nutrition or the food they use to eat, we can classify all organisms into three groups, that is autotrophic, or it may be called as photosynthetic. It means that those organisms which can produce their own food are known as autotrophic organisms. Second one, saprophytes, which can grow on dead and decaying materials, are known as saprophytic organisms. For example, fungi. And heterotrophic organisms, which use food produced by the autotrophic organisms, that are known as heterotrophs. It means that they depend for food on other organisms. For example, different animals. Now, the next criteria we observe, that is the lifestyle. Different types of lifestyles of organisms we can observe. For example, some organisms are producers, some are consumers, while some are decomposers. Producers which can produce food, consumers which use the produced food, and decomposers which decompose dead and decaying material. According to this lifestyle, we classify different organisms. And last one that we observe, phylogenetic relationship. In the phylogenetic relationship, we can observe the process of evolution in living organisms. For example, prokaryotes evolved into eukaryotes, unicellular evolved into multicellular organisms. Here we can observe first part of our lesson. After that, we have to know about the Whitaker's five kingdom system. But today we stop here, and there is one homework for you, that you have to write down some notes from the given PPTs. Remaining we will see in our next period.